I stumbled upon 11 unbelievable road trip horror stories that haunt me to this day. I never should have opened that door. My fingers trembled as I gripped the handle. The old, dusty wood felt cold against my skin. Inside, darkness loomed like a thick, suffocating fog. My heart raced, thudding against my chest. Every day, I drove the same route to work. The familiar road, bordered by crooked trees and wilted fields, sang to me with a mundane tune. But lately, strange things began to lurk in the corners of my mind. Whispers brushed against my ears during late-night drives. Shadows danced in my rearview mirror, slipping just out of view. Each night, that same chill crept into my bones, a shiver of dread. It was no longer just the weight of the night, it was more that I had heard the local legends. A vanishing hitchhiker. A phantom car that chased down unsuspecting travelers. A bridge that promised safety but delivered terror. Everyone talked about these stories like campfire tales, scary, but nothing real. But I knew better. I felt the truth lurking there, just beneath the surface. One evening, the moon hung like a watchful eye in the sky. I was driving home when I spotted something out of place, a figure on the side of the road. My pulse quickened. I slowed down, curiosity tugging at me. The figure was cloaked in shadows, the face hidden. My instincts screamed for me to keep moving. But an otherworldly pull drew me both closer and deeper into the dark. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the woods. I jumped, panic clawing at my throat. What was that? In the distance, the hairs on my arms stood on end. Someone or something was calling out. The sound curled around me, twisting my gut. I turned to see something glimmering in the gloom. Was it a car window reflecting the moonlight, or a pair of eyes locking onto mine? I gripped the wheel, desperately fighting the urge to look back. My hands were slick with sweat. The wind began to howl, swirling leaves into a frenzy, turning the roadside into a stage for horrors unseen. A voice broke through the chaos. It was low, pleading. "Help me," a whisper that dripped icy dread into my veins. And just like that, the atmosphere thickened, as if the very air had contracted around me. More crashes, like branches snapping. The hair on the back of my neck prickled. There was too much going on. Too much fear. What was waiting in the darkness? I pulled my foot off the brake, ready to speed away. In that exact moment, the figure stepped forward, and I locked eyes with Ida, face twisted in anguish, mouth open in a silent scream. A blinding flash seized my vision. The world fell silent. I felt my heart stop, then slam. A door shut behind me, echoing loudly through the quiet night. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The world returned with a jolt, blinding and bewildering. I was no longer in my car, but standing in the middle of an endless hall of mirrors, each reflection twisting reality into grotesque shapes. I reached for the nearest mirror and gasped as it rippled, the surface unsettlingly fluid, as if reality itself quivered at my touch. "Help me." The voice was closer now, echoing with a sinister familiarity. I turned, heart pounding, and the figure loomed again in a nearby reflection, its face still contorted in that agony. It wasn't just a stranger. It bore the haunting likeness of my late sister, lost to an accident years ago, her face forever stitched into my nightmares. "Is it really you?" I whispered, confusion and dread intertwining like vines around my heart. But as I peered deeper, the reflection shifted, becoming a swirling vortex that beckoned me with the allure of dark secrets and hidden places. I stepped closer as the ground beneath me trembled. The mirror began to vibrate, sending shock waves into my bones. Suddenly, the surface shattered, exploding in a shower of darkness that pulled me in, dragging me through an abyss where echoes of laughter mingled with cries of despair. I found myself in a desolate landscape, the sun a distant memory. A thick fog rolled across the cracked earth, laced with the smell of decay. Shadows lurked between the gnarled trees, twisting in the corners of my vision. Each step felt heavy, weighted with the realization that this was no ordinary nightmare. I had crossed a threshold into something far, far worse. The shadows converged, and I could hear the whispering again, familiar voices intermingled with unknown, wretched sounds of the lost. "Join us," they beckoned, wrapping around me like chains. "You can't escape like her." Panic surged through my body. No, I had to find a way out. I turned, but the landscape morphed around me, each direction leading me deeper into the grotesque reflections of my own turmoil. The sound of cracking branches echoed, and I felt something watching me from the thick veil of fog, a pulsing aura that clawed at my consciousness. "Run." A new voice shouted, raw and powerful. It pierced the mist, urging me forward. As I sprinted through the crush of darkness, I felt the ground shift again, uneven and treacherous. I barely registered the shadow darting past me until it stopped dead in its tracks, in indistinct form, now filling the hall of trees. The eyes that were once just reflections in mirrors glowed menacingly. "Turn back," it hissed, the air prickling with its breath that smelled of rot and despair. "You shouldn't be here. What do you want?" I screamed, adrenaline fueling my words, desperate for answers but more fearful of what I might find. The creature laughed, a dry sound that scraped like nails on a chalkboard. "What do we want? You're the one who opened the door." The shadows swarmed, and suddenly I was surrounded, the laughter of lost souls echoing around me like a mocking chorus. I stumbled, grasping for a way out, but panic froze me to the spot. The figure of my sister flickered in the distance, moaning softly, and I knew I had to reach her, but the shadows whispered secrets of their own. "Would you sacrifice your sister for your own life? Choose wisely, the clock is ticking." Just as I reached out for the frail hand of hope, the ground beneath me gave way, and I plunged into a vortex of darkness. The cries of the lost merged into a cacophony as I fell deeper into the void, and I could feel the fabric of reality tearing apart. With one last, desperate breath, I hit the ground hard-only to find myself back in my car, panting and slick with sweat. The whispers faded, replaced by an oppressive silence. I glanced in the rearview mirror, and there it was, an empty back seat, with a chill brushing against the nape of my neck. Before I could collect my thoughts, a knock rapped sharply against my window. I froze, the cold dread gripping me anew. I turned slowly, heart hammering in my chest, and met the disfigured face of the figure from the road, the very same one that had cursed my thoughts. Its mouth clenched tight, eyes glimmering a dreadful promise. "There's no escaping now," it hissed. A frantic scream clawed its way up my throat, but my voice failed me as the figure leaned closer, the window rattling in its frame. And then, the sound of a door slammed shut once more, this time from within the car. I was not alone. The air inside the car thickened, a tangible malaise that seeped into my skin like an unwanted parasite. The stench of decay mixed with the metallic tang of fear filled my lungs, making it difficult to breathe. For a heartbeat, I was paralyzed by horror, transfixed by those soulless eyes that held a darkness I couldn't begin to comprehend. Then came another knock, this time fervently against the hood. My heart raced as I forced myself to look away from the window, scanning the dashboard as if the array of dials and buttons could somehow shield me from this nightmare. The abandoned stretch of road beyond the glass felt impossibly distant, a memory slipping further away as dread consumed my thoughts that I gripped the steering wheel, the cold metal biting into my palms, as the figure outside gestured toward the forest that loomed like a predator in the distance. It pointed, finger trembling with an urgency that sent chills shooting down my spine. "Do you feel it?" it rasped, voice a jagged whisper that slithered into the corners of my mind. "The forest calls to you. It knows your name." I wanted to scream, but the fear paralyzed my voice. The idea that this being could harbor access to my darkest secrets made my blood run cold. I recalled the whispers in the void, the taunts that hinted at my guilt. An uneasy sensation of being watched wrapped around me, and my eyes darted to the rearview mirror. In the back seat, a figure began to form, emerging from the shadows like a specter unwilling to be ignored. At first, it was just a silhouette, undefined and ambiguous, but soon the features shaped themselves into something unmistakable. My heart sank as I recognized the facete was my sister, her features aged and marked by sorrow. "Help me," she mouthed, her voice mere breath against the silence. I could see it now, a grotesque sadness in her eyes, a pleading that surpassed the veil of death separating us. Before I could process the staggering concept that she was really here, the creature outside smiled a twisted, malevolent grin that stretched way too wide. Do you see? Your sister wants you, but so do we. The forest hungers, and the choice is yours. My mind raced, grappling with the impossibility of this moment. I couldn't lose her again. I screamed against the rising tide of confusion. What do you want with us? The figure broke into a cackling laughter that echoed through the still night air, reverberating off the metal of the car. To join the lost, to aid in the feast. It paused, voice dropping to a seductive whisper. You could save her. The forest rustled, branches snapping in a cacophony, urging me to listen. I felt trapped within my body, as if parts of me were pitted against each other, the instinct to escape battling the desperate yearning to save my sister. Time bled away, and all I could do was watch as her expression morphed from pleading to a more profound despair. The air thickened further, dense with unspoken words and shadows lurking just beyond my vision. Beneath their haunting echoes, I could hear a low murmur. The other voices were returning, drawn to the connection between us, as though we were offering a vessel for their torment. My heart raced again, this time with the weight of impending decision. Take her place, the monstrous figure hissed, shoving my sister closer to the edge of the abyss that pulsed around the car. Or allow her to become one of us. An eternity lost, a fate you both deserved. My breath caught in my throat, a web of despair wrapping tighter around my mind. I couldn't let her go to them. Yet, the choice loomed like a guillotine, swift and unforgiving. That moment, a deafening crash shattered the air, sending vibrations through the car. The figure outside screeched, disappearing into the dark as if sucked back into the shadows. For one blissful instant, silence enveloped us, granting a fleeting sense of safety. But I felt the presence growing, shadows stretching, clawing toward the windshield. Suddenly, my car began to shake, as if something monstrous was trying to break through from below. The engine sputtered and died. The headlights flickered before plunging us into terrifying darkness. Help me, my sister echoed again. But her voice was now layered with something sinister, something that sent shivers racing down my spine. As I turned back to her, the whole world shifted. The back seat melted away, replaced by an endless, creeping fog. My sister's face twisted into a mask of torment as she stretched her hand towards me, drawing closer against the consuming shadows. And then, beyond the horizon of my perception, a thundering chant began to rise, the shadows stirring into a rhythm that echoed with forgotten lives. Join us. Join us. Join us. I was losing her, losing everything I had left. In a final, desperate decision, I reached for her, for the last thread of hope. But the fog thickened, and without warning, reality snapped again, dragging me into a world that was no longer my own. And as I screamed, I heard the last echoing words in my mind, the promise of something far more dreadful waiting to be unveiled. Welcome home. The world around me swirled and twisted, colors bleeding into an inky abyss. The echoes of my screams reverberated back to me, warped and unrecognizable. I tried to grasp at the remnants of my reality, but nothing was solid, nothing connected. The air crackled with a palpable energy, a sinister magnetism that pulled at my very essence, threatening to unravel the fabric of my soul. Then, as quickly as it had come, the fog lifted. I found myself standing in a clearing, the ground cold and wet beneath my feet. The oppressive silence suffocated me, replaced only by the rustling of branches overhead, whispering secrets I was desperate to ignore. Glancing around, I discerned the edges of the forest, the shadows within it throbbing with anticipation, almost alive. The palpable dread gnawed at my insides, my heart thundered in my ears, a primal drumbeat urging me to flee. That's when I felt Ida's soft brush against my shoulder, a faint chill that traveled down my spine. I turned just in time to find another figure standing close behind me. It was a child, perhaps 8 or 9, with hollow cheeks and wide, darting eyes that reflected fear, but also something far darker. Are you lost? The child asked, their voice small and tremulous, yet echoing with an unnatural resonance. It sent tremors through my bones. No, Other words caught in my throat. Was it the truth? My heart echoed a different story, reminding me that I had just lost my sister to the darkness that consumed everything around me. I need to find her. The child shook their head, a slow, deliberate movement that stirred a part of me that wanted to believe and hope. You'll never find her here. Once you're taken, you belong to the forest. Forever. Panic surged within me, raising every hair on my body. What do you mean? I asked, stepping back instinctively. Where is she? Where they all are. Where you will be soon, the child replied, raising a finger and gesturing toward the shadows lurking just beyond the tree line. It's hungry, and it wants you to join the others. They're waiting. I followed the child's gaze, and my stomach dropped. Figures began to materialize among the trees, blurred silhouettes of twisted bodies and anguished faces, their expressions frozen in a grotesque blend of terror and longing. I could recognize the outlines, lost souls searching for relief, for escape, all trapped in this realm of despair. They started shouting, their voices a haunting chorus, bursting forth like caged animals eager to flee. Join us. Join us. The darkness is home. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the roots exposed like gnarled fingers poking through the earth. The forest throbbed with life around me as shadows lunged and receded, blurring the line between the tangible and the illusory. No, I cried out, desperate to sever my connection to this nightmare. As I turned, I felt an intense heat pressing against my back, an unseen force stirring the air around me with violent intent. I whirled around to find the child had vanished, leaving behind an imprint in the moist earth. But the pulse of something dark, something ancient seemed to grow stronger, echoing through my body like a heartbeat. Then another figure emerged from the treeline. This one was taller, a shadowy giant, eyes glimmering, reflecting a myriad of colors that flickered like the dying embers of a fire. It stepped forward, revealing skin the color of charred wood and a face that twisted in perpetual hunger. You feel it, don't you? It rumbled, voice like the cracking of branches in a storm. The call of the forest is irresistible. Your sister's essence is intertwined with all who came before. You belong here. No, I screamed, frantically shaking my head. I won't stay here. Join us, the figure cooed, a sickly sweet tone that bypassed my logic and burrowed deep into my emotions. Free her from the fears that cling to her. Sacrifice yourself, and you will know the peace that comes with belonging. Visions of my sister surged through my mind, her laughter, her tears, the warmth of her embrace. I was losing her again. The realization slammed into me like a wave, and the ghastly notion of laying down my life for hers took shape in the shadows behind me. But what would I become? Before I could fully comprehend my decision, the ground beneath my feet trembled, opening up a yawning chasm that belched forth an otherworldly light, illuminating the darkened forest. It was a beckoning, a promise of escape, but unlike any I had ever known. In that moment, as the figure stretched out an elongated hand toward me, a guttural roar erupted from the depths of the fog, the forest trembling with anticipation. The Lost Souls ID scene began to swirl like disturbed leaves caught in a cyclone, their voices rising in haunting harmony. Join us. Join us. And as the ground quaked more violently, I stumbled toward the edge, teetering on the brink of obliteration, teetering on the edge of an eternity that could claim both my sister and me. Just as I felt myself being pulled forward, a desperate cry tore through the cacophony of voices, a cry that shattered everything as it pierced through me. Don't leave me. It was my sister. The darkness quaked with rage as the shadows deepened, reaching, grasping, as I stood one heartbeat away from succumbing to the abyss. Whatever choice I had left to make would determine what we became, lost spirits or survivors bound by a curse. And then, a crack of lightning split the dark sky overhead, revealing a figure, me sister, barely visible but unmistakably there, reaching out one last time, lingering on the threshold between life and the eternal night. Time froze as realization gripped me. Either I would leap into the chasm with the hope of saving her, or I would be swallowed whole by the darkness of the forest and its insatiable longing. Before I could make a choice, the earth beneath me rumbled violently, sending me spiraling into the unknown, and I was falling. As I plummeted into the void, a whirlwind of sensations assaulted my senses. Time twisted and stretched, each passing moment echoing in an eternity. The forest raged above me, its shadows clawing at the air as I fell deeper into an abyss of pulsating dread. For an instant, I floated in that dark space, weightless, as voices encircled me, whispering secrets only meant for the hopeless. Then, without warning, I landed not on soft earth or moist grass, but on something cold and unforgiving. My body recoiled, the impact rippling through my bones. I found myself lying on a surface slick with a viscous fluid, the smell of decay clawing at my throat. Pushing myself up, I blinked into the half-light. The world was a shifting tableau of silhouettes and flickering shapes that danced just beyond my reach. That I scrambled to my feet, the sensation of being watched prickling at the back of my neck. Shadows flitted at the peripheries of my vision, and deep down, I sensed the pulsing heart of the forest, thrumming like a drum beneath my feet. The atmosphere was thick with despair, an invisible weight that pressed upon my chest, making it difficult to breathe. Welcome, a voice slithered from the void, smooth and silky, yet alight with malice. It wrapped around me like a caress, luring my senses into a false comfort. I turned my head sharply, scanning the surroundings. From the darkened corners, twisted faces emerged, their features distorted in masks of anguish and longing, faces like those I'd glimpsed before, but closer now, their voices echoing from beyond the grave. "Join us," they chanted, their words melding into a haunting melody that resonated through my very being. "It's more beautiful here than the world you left behind. Embrace the truth of your descent." That I clutched my head, feeling the pressure of their supplication enveloping me. Desperation flooded my thoughts. Where was my sister? A desperate cry bubbled up, but it was swallowed by the cacophony surrounding me. "Help!" I shouted, my voice cracking. Yet all that responded were the mournful echoes of countless souls, trapped in this spectral dance. They shifted closer, their hollow gazes boring into my own, filled with a fervent longing that terrified me. Then I saw her. In the midst of the embracing darkness, a flicker of familiarity glowed, a thin silhouette standing apart from the others. It was my sister. Panic surged through me, urging me toward her. "Don't let them take you," I screamed, forcing myself through the thrumming mass of lost spirits. But with each step I took, it felt like running through thick molasses. The shadows stretched and twisted, trying to ensnare me. Just when I thought I could reach her, the figures began whispering malicious secrets about the bond that tethered me to her. "Her fate is entwined with yours," one of the hushed voices taunted, sending shivers coursing down my spine. "You cannot save her without forsaking yourself. Stop," I cried, choking on the overwhelming truth that clawed at my consciousness. I pushed harder against the invisible wall, throwing my weight toward her, every ounce of my being focused on closing the distance. That I reached out. My fingertips brushed her hand, cold and slim, like a ghostly wisp. But she flickered, her form becoming hazy as my connection waned. "Please," I shouted, desperation surging anew. "Come back. We can escape together. Join us." The chorus echoed around me, and from the shadows, the giant figure emerged once more, towering above us, eyes glimmering with cosmic hunger. "You cannot escape this fate. Instead, offer yourselves to the forest, and you will find peace." Terror clawed at my insides, but as I looked into my sister's eyes, I saw a different reflection, fear mingling with confusion, and a glimmer of hope that still thrived deep within. "Fight it, Tessa," I pleaded, determined not to lose her again. "Fight the darkness. Well, break free." A flicker of determination ignited in her eyes, but then the forest itself seemed to shudder with displeasure. The ground beneath me quaked violently, and shadows writhed like snakes, constricting any potential for escape. My heart raced as I felt the very fabric of reality around us begin to tear. Then, from the heart of the chaos, a shape loomed, an enormous maw, gaping wide, lined with rows of jagged teeth that seemed impossibly sharp, glistening with the remnants of past victims. It was pulling at the edges of my sanity, a yawning trap meant to consume us both. "Join us." The voices crescendoed into a fevered pitch, desperate and broken, as I found myself being pulled toward the abyss once more. "You are no longer separate. You are one with the forest. Surrender." Just as the rift threatened to consume us, Tessa gasped, her eyes locking with mine. Be strong, Ray. I will always be with you. A dreadful roar erupted, shaking the trees and rattling the very essence of the ground beneath us. I watched helplessly as she vanished into the darkness, pulled into the depths of the entity's MAWNO. I cried, my scream merging with the cacophony of lost souls. A sudden jolt reverberated through me as I was wrenched from the spot, pulled toward the unrelenting opening despite my desperate grasp at nothingness. Time slowed, and I glimpsed the darkness engulfs my sister completely. Ray. Her voice faded into the distance, swallowed by the lustful wails of the forest, leaving nothing but an echoed as the maw closed in around me. I felt icy tendrils wrap around my legs, dragging me toward the endless void. In that moment, I understood the truth. If I succumbed, we would become yet another tale of sorrow for the forest to tell, a warning wrapped in the shadow of those who dared to escape. And then the abyss swallowed me whole. With a final thought of Tessa, a beam of blinding light erupted from my core, igniting a battle against the consuming darkness. But as I found myself enveloped by that raw, unforgiving power, the truth struck me, a truth that threatened to hollow me out completely. I would have to make an impossible choice, and the forest hungered, waiting to see if I would save or doom us both. The darkness engulfed me, a tangible entity clawing at every shred of light, every memory. Against the backdrop of countless whispers, the wordless cries of the forest began to seep into my mind, unspoken fears morphing into visions beyond comprehension. As my panic escalated, I felt a surge beneath the surface of my consciousness, a flicker of power igniting like a sparking fuse. But even as I grasped for it, a chilling clarity emerged. This was not simply my struggle. I was intertwined with a darker essence, the very fabric of the forest wrapping around my essence. I was not just fighting for myself, but for Tessa, who I could still feel tethered to me through some spectral cord, a connection that echoed through the void. Then, the light within me expanded, exploding like a supernova in that consuming dark. I found myself suspended in a surreal realm, each shadow tremoring in response to the pulse of my renewed determination. Release, I commanded, the word roaring from my mouth like a battle cry. The tendrils began to quiver, reluctantly loosening their fetid grip. I wrenched my limbs free, every ounce of willpower concentrating on severing the bonds that tied me not only to this insatiable darkness, but to the ghosts ensnared within. I felt their pain and yearned for their freedom even as I fought to reclaim my own. The air crackled, a counterforce to the oppressive chill encasing me, and the shadowy figures that once towered now wilted, shrinking back as the light radiated through me like a dam bursting, flooding the void with purity. Their visages morphed, revealing backlit faces twisted in sorrow and pain. Yet somewhere in their depths, I glimpsed flickers of hope. You can help us, came the voices, a harmony of dread and desperation that blended artfully into an unsettling lullaby. Save us, and you will find her. Together, we can escape. Shut up, I snarled, my voice dripping with defiance. Their haunting presence repulsed me, yet I felt the pain of their stories seep into my very bones, each of them trapped in this hellish landscape by their own pasts, their agonies intertwining. There rested a morbid solidarity, but I saw it for what it was, a trap designed to ensnare my sympathy, to weigh me down in the shadows. Suddenly, a chilling wind swept through, and with it came the sound of rustling leaves. A shimmering figure flickered at the periphery, a delicate, ghostly form. My heart clenched as I recognized that familiar silhouette, her ethereal glow shimmering amidst the darkness. Tessa, I called out, straining to reach her as the vein-thin light arcs flickered like dying stars. But as her face came into view, a fearsome rage rippled through the abyss. Rhett, her voice was more fragile than I remembered, a thread of desperation tangled with the echoes of darkness. You've conjured their wrath. They're coming for you. A force slammed into me, throwing me to the ground, and the darkness began to pulse with renewed vigor, a massive wave attempting to crush me beneath the weight of its endless despair. Shadows swirled like a cyclone, dark tendrils snaking around my wrists, ankles, gluing me to the muck from which no living thing should emerge intact. They will draw your essence from the promise of compassion. The voices howled, their sorrow twisting into mockery. Join the sorrow. Become one with the forest. Through gritted teeth, I yelled, I will not. It was a desperation-filled scream, the kind that was echoed by the countless souls wrapped in torment. And yet, as the shadows huddled closer, pooling around me, I knew the truth. Sheer will wasn't enough. I needed to transcend the pull of their despair, needed to find the light in Tessa. Trust me, I shouted, channeling every ounce of love I had for her, projecting it into the darkness. Gradually, unseen bonds formed between us, and with every heartbeat, I realized I could wield its power, ignite that bond, not only to fend off the darkness, but to weaken its hold over my sister. The maddening cacophony of lost voices swelled, their desperation intensifying. I struggled against the tendrils, but they tightened around me, pulling me closer to the heart of the forest's malignity. I felt the pulsating core where emptiness twisted into everything that was wrong, a nexus of nightmares, feeding off souls like mine that dared to dream of light. Ray. Tessa's voice broke through, equal parts plea and warning. You're losing yourself to the darkness. Fight harder. The crushing loneliness of their deep-seated grief crashed over me, trying to drag us down. As light and dark engaged in a visceral struggle within me, I had a momentary epiphany. The forest didn't just feed on life. It thrived on despair, pain, and loss. It captured souls not just for the wickedness of it, but to claim a twisted form of companionship. Darkness can't have Tessa, I hollered defiantly, ripping at the chains that bound me to the forest's grasp. The energy surged within me as I tapped into that bond, a spell cast from desperation with fire and fury. But just as the tendrils relinquished their hold, a scream erupted from behind. It was Tessa's shrill wail that deafened all thoughts. The shadowy figures lurched backward, and for a moment, I saw what lay behind her, an even darker presence, woven from despair and malice, bursting forth with a hunger that would shatter all remnants of hope. Tessa, no! I screamed as the darkness lunged, a grotesque maw opening behind her, filled with a nauseating array of sharpened teeth. Ray, she cried, eyes wide with fear and understanding. Then, in that fleeting moment of horror, the realization struck me hard. The darkness didn't need me to surrender. It only needed me to falter. Even as I screamed her name, I felt the heartbeat of the forest quicken, threads around me tightening, threatening to tear me apart. Light flickered, illumination waning under the weight of chilling dread. And just before the shadows closed in once more, I heard an unmistakable whisper of countless voices, promising that the deepest bonds could nurture the darkest hearts. Join us, we are waiting, become one. I looked into Tessa's frightened eyes and understood we were about to face the forest's true hunger together. With a final surge of defiance, I prepared to fight against the consuming void. But just as I made the choice, the edges of reality shifted like a sinister wave, obscuring our final chance for escape. And then, with one heart-stopping moment, the darkness shattered into 1,000 shards, plunging us both into an unending scream where choices blurred and the forest awaited, hungry for our next move. The shriek of the void echoed in my ears, a dissonant symphony of fear, agony, and the unmistakable scent of lost souls. As the shards of darkness glimmered like shards of glass in the air, I felt the weight of their malevolence pressing down, an oppressive gloom that forbade any escape. The edges of reality twisted and warped, transforming the forest into a labyrinth of despair. Paths that once led to freedom now twisted into grotesque shapes, beckoning with the allure of hopelessness. Ray. Tessa's voice cut through the chaos, but it was barely recognizable, as if swallowed by the abyss. I turned towards her, where she struggled against the grasping tendrils that snaked around her, the shadows contorting her form, warping her features into a visage of anguish. We have to get out. Fight it. But with every desperate breath, I felt the forest's grip tighten, its essence infused into the air we breathed, thick with the weight of 1,000 lost hopes. The faint glow of Tessa's presence shimmered, illuminating the darkness, but it was fading, cast into an ever-deepening hollow, like the last spark of fire fighting against a damp wind. Panic surged within me, intensifying my connection to her as I reached out, furiously tearing against the shadows that encased her. I won't let them take you. I cried, every ounce of my being entwined with determination. With that, I felt the pulse of power beneath me thrumming like an awakened beast. But it wasn't enough. Just beyond us, I could hear the whispering voices aligning into a single chilling murmur, entwined with laughter born of malice and despair. Release the pain, embrace the darkness, become eternal. Every heartbeat thundered in my chest, battling against their insidious chant. But as I steeled myself to resist, the voices turned to screams. Time warped, a claustrophobic spiraling tunnel where shadows reached forth to envelop me, their haunting grasp growing more insistent. And then, a sudden clarity pierced through the haze of panic. I began to see them, faces emerging from the depths of shadows, eyes wide with unspoken stories, trapped in this cycle of pain and dread. I recognized one, the lost visage of a child, staring at me with wide, pleading eyes. Paralyzed by despair, I hesitated, realizing that the weight of their sorrow burst through like an abandoned dam. "Don't look at them," Tessa shouted, pulling my attention back. "They will take you." But a whisper trickled into my mind, weaving its way into my heart, tempting me to receive their suffering, to understand their misery. "Join us, feel the freedom only death can offer." That flicker of light in Tessa began to slip deeper into the consuming void, like fire retreating into cold. In that horrifying moment, my choice faltered between saving her and confronting the very essence of fear that sought to overwhelm me. "I can't." My voice cracked as I felt the shadows twitch at my heels. I could not give in. I could not lose her, no. Tessa's scream pierced through the shadows like glass shattering. "Ray, you have to focus on our connection. We're stronger together." She reached for me, but the darkness around her twisted in a ravenous dance, pulling her back, inch by inch. "Fight. Don't let them break us," she urged, the defiance in her eyes flickering like a weak candle against the storm. Suddenly, a violent tremor rumbled through the ground beneath us, splintering the air with the sound of cracking wood and snapping vines. I stumbled, instinctively reaching out for Tessa as the shadows churned like a frenzied storm, intertwined like serpents, howling with rage. From the depths of the chaos, a low growl erupted, underscoring the shadows, the voice of something ancient, powerful, announcing its presence. The trees around us swayed unnaturally, limbs extending grotesquely, stretching towards us as if to snatch away our fragments of light. My heart raced with dread as they morphed into twisted arms, reaching out, desperate. Then, through the din, a chilling laughter escaped the shadows, a sound woven from the echoes of the damned. "True submission awaits. Surrender to the darkness, and together we will build the eternal night." Suddenly, the ground beneath us split wide open, revealing a yawning chasm, raw and hungry, throbbing with every tortured scream that emerged from the depths. A luminescent mist poured forth from the abyss, shimmering with the souls of those who had surrendered to despair, their faces twisted in eternal lament. That I, in that moment, a choice beckoned between retreating back into despair or charging forward into that unending void. As Tessa was pulled away, I caught a glimmer of defiance in her eyes, even as the shadows danced around us, threatening to engulf everything we were. "No!" I roared, wrenching myself forward as realization struck like lightning. This anguish, this torment was a reflection of my own fears. In a flash, the darkness surged again, and time warped once more, distorting sound and vision. A sudden bolt of rage surged through my veins, channeling the last flicker of light I had left. "Tessa, hold on!" I cried as I lunged towards the chasm, feeling the pull of the shadows tugging on my very soul. And in a moment of shocking clarity, I understood the forest's purpose. It was not only consuming us, but using our deepest connections against us, waging a war between hope and despair. But I wouldn't let it win. With an agonizing scream, I leaped forward into the phantom mist, into the beckoning maw of the darkness, ready to confront my own fears, ready to save Tessa or join the suffering forever. And as I plunged into the darkness, a voice echoed hauntingly in the void, cold yet sweet with victory. "Welcome home." The chill of the abyss enveloped me, pulling me deeper into a world devoid of light. I felt like I was falling through eternity, drifting through a void filled with the cries of the damned, their voices intertwining into a cacophony of anguish. I landed unceremoniously on cold, damp ground, the atmosphere heavy with despair. The absence of sound was jolted only by a soft, sinister chuckle, a reminder that I had entered a realm where hope was but a mere whisper. I had leaped not into darkness, but into a torment orchestrated by that haunting voice that echoed around me, tantalizingly familiar, yet deeply anonymous. It invited me into the heart of their suffering. As I struggled to stand, a faint glow flickered, revealing grotesque shapes writhed in the gloom, the remnants of lost souls tethered to their eternal suffering. The air thickened with sorrow, each breath a struggle against the suffocating menace surrounding me. I could feel the whispers crawling under my skin, laced with seduction and despair. "Welcome, welcome to those who dare to tread where the living should not," the voice cooed, wrapping itself around my thoughts, threatening to seep into my very essence. In the distance, I caught sight of movement, a flicker of light struggling against the overwhelming tide of darkness. It tugged at my heart. "Tessa," I breathed, scrambling toward it, the desperation clawing at my throat. But the shadows writhed and twisted beneath my feet, pulling me back, forcing me down onto my knees. The faces of the tormented emerged in clusters, their hollow eyes mesmerizing, filled with longing and despair. "Join us," they whispered in harmony, lips curling as if confessing secrets of exquisite torment. "No," I shouted, breaking free from their grip. I shoved forward, driven by Tessa's essence, a beacon in the darkness. "Tessa, I'm coming." I pushed through the throng of shadows, barely able to keep my footing as they clawed at my mind, their whispers blurring the line between my thoughts and theirs. The pulsing dread surged in my chest. My heart echoed the forewarned rhythm of despair, a heartbeat lost in an eternity of decay. The glow intensified, and through the weave of torment, I saw her, Tessa, standing at the edge of a vaporous chasm, her expression a mix of horror, hope, and something else, terror. "Ray, you shouldn't have come." Her anguished cry felt like a razor cutting through the symphony of the damned, igniting my resolve. "Don't you see? I would follow you into the depths of hell." But even as I spoke, the shadows pulsed with a life of their own. Tendrils reached out, wrapping around Tessa's form, pulling her closer to the gap where time and space collapsed into a swirling void. "Surrender," they taunted, their voices dripping with ecstasy. "Embrace your end, embrace her end." Let the light fade. That I surged forward, the darkness clawing at my limbs, forward into the watery embrace of Tessa. "Fight it, Tessa. Focus on me." As my fingers brushed against hers, I felt a surge of something, an electric connection that shot through the air, stitching together our separated souls just for a heartbeat. Yet, the shadows recoiled, screeching with fury as they sought to tear our bond apart. "Together," she screamed, her eyes fierce with defiance, glimmering with a flicker of that radiant strength I cherished. But then it happened. The air shifted, a prickle of energy coursed through the ground beneath us as the chasm began to expand, its edges splitting into jagged teeth, ready to devour everything in sight. The very ground shook violently, and an ancient roar erupted from the depths, resonating through to the marrow of my bones. "You dare defy me?" The voice hissed, its power curling around me like a snake ready to strike. A blinding light suddenly engulfed the space between us as something ominous surged forward, a monstrous entity shaped from the very fabric of despair. Its features fluctuated, snapshots of everyone's fears, fragmented and twisted into a grotesque visage of naked rage. "One shall remain, the other shall perish." It boomed, an ever-increasing vibration that rattled my core. As I stared into this beast formed of nightmares, I felt Tessa's grip loosen, the shadows twining tighter around her. "I won't let you take her. I will fight," I cried, feeling the energy surge within me, urging me into action against the horror materializing before us. But as I opened my mouth to muster a counter, I locked eyes with Tessa again. Her fear rose as the darkness threatened to consume us both. Then the powerful entity unleashed a guttural laugh that reverberated in my bones, the shadows surging forward, and I could see her flare of hope begin to dim as darkness enveloped her. "You must choose," it screamed, the realm shaking beneath its force. Then suddenly, Tessa's eyes widened, her mouth opened in what I felt would be a scream, but it was smothered, velvet error curling around her lips. And then she was gone, her essence sucked into the maw of the void, leaving behind the ghost of a smile and a haunting whisper that fell into silence. No. I roared into the desolation as the entity laughed again, a triumphant sound echoing off the walls of despair, filled with the promise of suffering. Welcome to your reckoning. It jeered mockingly as the darkness surged toward me, hungry and insatiable that I in that moment. It all blurred together. Fear, rage, grief racing through my veins as I stood frozen in the storm of shadows, Tessa's name clawing at the back of my throat. And then, as the encroaching darkness loomed, a sliver of hope shimmered through my despair. Would I succumb, or would I fight? But before I could decide, the world around me twisted and collapsed in a violent whirlwind, time folding itself. A sudden crack in the fabric concluded the silence, the entity's roar echoing ominously. A second later, it sank its shadows toward me, pulling me into the midnight abyss where an incomprehensible laughter, all-consuming and eternal, shattered the very essence of my being. My choice loomed heavy as the darkness whispered, "You will never leave this place." And then, as the final threads of light scattered into dust, I felt the all-consuming shadow wrap around me, clutching my mind as I plunged deeper into the unfathomable darkness. My scream echoed into the void, but no one came to answer, a void where nothing could escape, and all hope disintegrated into silence. The soft whispers of despair continued to coil around me, their chilling caresses tracing every surface of my mind, digging deeper into my thoughts, threatening to unravel my sanity. I drifted, suspended between the memories of Tessa and the unfolding nightmare, my fingers reaching out into the emptiness where she had once stood. The loss clawed at my heart with an urgency that turned my blood to ice. Through the miasma of anguish, I stumbled forward, almost weightless, drawn irresistibly toward a distant echo of Tessa's voice, flickering like a candle submerged in an ocean of darkness. The shadows bucked against my will, tearing at my memories of her laughter, her warmth, the light that banished the gloom whenever she was near. "Ray, Ray," her voice faded and swelled like the tide. Each syllable was stitched with a promise and warning, resonating through the twisted landscape. I followed it instinctively, though every step felt like a treacherous dance upon a knife's edge, the chasms yawning open at my feet, whispering secrets of despair and doom. As I pressed onward, the whispers morphed into horrific beginning lines of ghastly tales, stories of road trips ended in terror, of friends consumed by their own fears, of eternal wandering. Each account threaded through the projective shadows around me, folding onto each other in an unholy tapestry of misery, bleeding into my very soul. "Do you hear them?" A voice slithered through the cacophony. "They travel these roads eternally, yet never reach their destination." I turned, heart thundering, but there was only darkness, nothing but shades where the voices once promised faces. I was not alone. The shadows writhed, reconfiguring themselves, bending into aberrant shapes, forming apparitions of weary travelers, their faces twisted in torment and dread. They pinched at the edges of my vision like frozen fragments torn from lives that had been cruelly cut short. "We drive forever hoping to find salvation, but we are always lost," one figure murmured, voice trembling as if each word threatened to shatter under its own weight. "Please, help me find her," I begged, hands trembling at my sides. "Tessa was here, she was taken. I can't lose her. I want." But the figures merely stared, eyes glistening blacker than the void surrounding us, mouths opening in silent screams, echoing the silent agony of years wasted and destinies ruined. "There is no helping here, traveler. Only the relentless pursuit of the light that eludes us." That I staggered backward, the bittersweet scent of desperation pooling around me like quicksand, dragging me further down into despair. I turned to run, heart racing, but the shadows flooded in, lapping around my ankles, binding me, clamoring for a taste of my fear. "Ray, Ray," Tessa's voice pierced through again, clearer this time, mingled with something dark and sinister, an urgent plea, desperate yet soaked in the suffocating wet warmth of despair. "Come closer." I fell to my knees, hands pressed against the damp, cold ground, where I could feel the energy pulsing beneath the surface. "Tessa!" I screamed into the throbbing emptiness, the sound shattering the walls of silence, reverberating with the weight of my longing and feared. As if inviting my fury, the shadows rippled, exposing fleeting glimpses of Hera, distorted mirror of the light I once knew. Tessa's form shimmered in and out of existence, a tortured prisoner of this grotesque realm. "You must be strong, Ray. Fight it." The entities swarmed, their whispers turning into a shrill cacophony, burrowing into my thoughts, drowning out the essence of her voice. "The price of love is suffering," they hissed, as a chill wrapped around my spine. "The price of freedom is your essence." That I clenched my fists, determination igniting deep within me as I fought against the oppressive tide of darkness. "I won't give up on you. He'll find a way." And then, just as I thought I'd turned the tide, the ground split wide beneath me, and I plunged into an ethereal stream. It was like falling through mist, a narrow thread of light carving through the chaos. I was falling, yet not into despair, but into something else, an illumination twisting and folding, giving birth to phantoms of my deepest fears. Shadows flickered and dissolved before me, morphing into images of Tess, each iteration an echo of a road trip memory shared, punctuated by laughter, warmth, and shadows creeping at the edges. But as I reached out, desperate to grasp her fleeting form, I found myself hurled into an abyss populated by twisted versions of our experiences, the joy eroded by the darkness that had become its shadow. And then, as her light dwindled to a mere flicker, the ghastly form of the entity from before materialized, lurking at the edges of my perception. Its laughter echoed around me, wrapping around my throat like a noose. "You mistake illumination for salvation. In this place, it shall be your own darkness you face." The ground warned before it buckled again, offering no reprieve as I was caught in a tumble through nightmares revived me, own fears manifested before me, dragging me into a grotesque joyride of horror. "Do you want to see the end, Ray? Would you stand still in the face of oblivion?" The dark voice boomed, now impossibly close. In the chaotic rush of confusion, I heard the faintest whisper, Tessa's voice barely breaking through, calling to me from a distance that stretched beyond my understanding. "Ray, please, find the key." And then, as if the shadows compelled me to choose where the horrors could lead, I felt a presence pooling within like ice, a void of dread and uncertainty crashing upon me. "Choose, Ray. You are running out of time." The ground cracked, the shadows coiling ravenously, and as I struggled to call out to Tessa one last time, the very fabric of the void tore apart, throwing me into an abyss deeper than despair. "Which road would you take?" The darkness hissed as I plummeted, the shadows lashing at my sides, feeding off my fear. I felt the thick tendrils encircling my heart, each loop tightening, slipping into the depths of my soul. And then, in a final, agonizing moment, I crossed the threshold between despair and oblivion. I found myself standing not in the void, but in a twisted reflection of our car, parked on a road that led to nowhere, a haunting chill let loose in the air, sickeningly familiar. But as I approached, dread coursing through my veins, I saw the figure in the back seat, a girl with eyes like Tessa, but filled with unrecognizable terror, a puppet of the darkness waiting to strike. The moment my heart dropped and time hung suspended, I knew I had only begun to unearth the true cost of love. The haunting price of our road entwined in dread, and the choice had become startlingly clear. And with that realization, the laughter erupted, drowning out my cries as the apparition twisted into shadows, beckoning me to join an unending journey of horror. I awoke in a haze, the dizzying spirals of darkness tethered to my consciousness like a weight I could not shake off. I was back in the car, drenched in sweat, heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribcage. Everything felt unreal, but the road stretched endlessly ahead, the asphalt simmering under the weight of a shrouded dusk. I blinked, attempting to shake off the remnants of the nightmare, but they clung to me like cobwebs. And then it hit crushing realization that I had made a critical mistake. The darkness had offered me a way out, a path riddled with shadows that held Tessa. I glanced at my rearview mirror, only to be met with the empty back seat, the chill of her absence wrapping around my heart like a vice. Panic clawed at my throat, But before I could spiral into despair, I remembered the whispers, the message laced with desperation. Find the key. But what key? The question rattled in my mind like a prisoner longing for freedom. Restlessness flickered through me like wildfire in dry brush. I looked out at the desolate road winding forward, and then shifted my grip on the wheel, steeling myself against the darkness intruding upon my consciousness. With each mile, the shadows gained tenacity, presenting grotesque illusions from the corners of my mind, recalling my past with cruel clarity. Just keep driving, I whispered to myself, knowing that my return home was no more than an illusion alley, a mere detour to entrap me deeper. I pressed harder on the accelerator, desperately searching for a destination. But that's when it changed. The trees lining the roadside twisted and morphed, warping into monstrous shapes that loomed ominously above, reaching for me with vine-like tendrils. I gripped the wheel tighter, fear racing through me as I sped down the road like a moth drawn to a flame. That's when I saw her Aghaina, a fleeting image in the periphery, her outline shimmering against the black canvas of dread. Tessa. The hope ignited in my chest like a flare, overwhelming my senses. Tessa, I shouted in disbelief, but the apparition dissipated into the air, leaving nothing but a whisper on the wind. Ray, it was faint, but the sound resonated like a distant echo, a devil's snare woven into reality. I leaned forward, muscles taut. Where was she? I had to find her. The world lurched violently as the shadows erupted around me, enveloping the scene in a suffocating gloom. Suddenly, everything shifted, the rhythmic pulse of the car waned, plunging me into surreal chaos. The rearview mirror began to ripple, distorting into an unrecognizable void that demanded attention, a portal threatening to open. Instinctively, I turned back, hoping to shake off the tangled threads of despair, but they wrapped tighter, memories flooding back, each ghostly face trapped in the grip of anguish, pleading for acknowledgement. Lost souls, or would-be memories. It hardly mattered, for in that moment, they all clamored for my attention. Join us. Save us. They whispered in unity, an unholy chorus resounding against my sanity. I felt the nightmares encroach across the fabric of my being, solidifying my insecurities into very real manifestations. No, I screamed into the dark, desperate to push it away, the last bastion of defiance against the swirling tide of hopelessness. But then a thought flickered across my mind like fireflies in the night, a notion, a tenuous strand that dared float forth amidst the chaos. The key in the memory. With fear clawing at my throat, I gripped the steering wheel, forcing myself to focus. I saw her face, the warmth of Tessa's smile etched in my heart, reminding me of every laugh shared on our road trips, every cherished moment that brought light into our lives. But amidst those memories lurked more. The laughter mingled with fear, her endless looping whisper from the shadows. Reaching for help, I slammed my foot on the brakes, skidding to a halt on the deserted road, tires screeching against the asphalt. The resonance of the world around me shifted, shadows retreating and pulling back, holding their breath like sentinels awaiting judgment. Help me. Her voice flickered on the breeze, beckoning, genuine, yet shrouded in agony. I closed my eyes, honing in on the essence of our bond, allowing sorrow to mingle with fervor. I'm coming for you, Tessa, I finally intoned, setting my intention against the power of the darkness clawing at my resolve. In my mind's eye, I envisioned her, locking away the panic that threatened to spill forth. I reached toward the rearview mirror, watching the swirling abyss, and instead summoned the memories of light shared between us, invoking every shred of courage her spirit gifted me. I could hear my heart thrumming, fervently pounding with the will to win. And just as I thought it would culminate into nothingness, the car engine roared back to life, the headlights illuminating the darkened path ahead. The shadows had receded, yet hope stirred beneath the surface of the dread interwoven within me. Find me echoed like a heartbeat thrumming through the air. That I slammed the car into drive, hurtling down the road, hunting for an end that wouldn't come. Ahead lay the forest, twisted and inviting the darkness that beckoned. But now, I realized it was also a chance of passage, the threshold where I could recover every lost thing by confronting the truth head-on. Entering the fathomless depth of the trees, the shadows curdled and charged toward me. Turn back, they warned, their whispers swirling around like an ominous wind. You don't know what you seek. But blinded by love, I surged forward, branches clawing at my skin like dark confessions spilling forth. Together, Tessa, I shouted. You're still in there. I won't leave without you. With each word, a new pulse of light ignited around me, illuminating my path as unseen forces battled for control. The shadows lunged fiercely, a flurry of desperate faces swirling into my consciousness and echoing into oblivion. You cannot help her, they hissed, voices laced with a tormented chorus. Yet in that clamor, amidst the shrouded figures, I saw Hera's fleeting silhouette standing at the heart of the gloom. This form flickered, barely recognizable, caught in a whirlwind of shadows. Tessa, my voice broke with anguish as I pushed past the shadows, tearing through their grasp with raw determination. Ray, help me, she cried, panic laced with memories lost in torment. Stay with me. Then it happened. The world cracked open. The spectral shadows converged and morphed into a pulsating maelstrom, a ragged portal stretching wider, obscuring everything I had ever known. As tendrils of darkness coiled around the edges, I charged forward, heart racing against despair's grip. I could almost reach her, almost feel her essence melding with my own. Together our voices blended a string of memories woven tight, love, laughter, and pain. I won't let go, I screamed as I launched into the heart of that shattering void. And then I felt it. The shadows recoiled, an energy wave exploding from within. That connection unfolded, and she was there in the depths of it, me sister. Not merely the embodiment of pain, but the crystallized essence of hope. The air hummed with a vibrant pulse, beckoning us both toward each other as our voices merged into a symphony of defiance against the forest's will. Suddenly, the shadows howled, retreating into shrieks of anguish as the air crackled with energy. No, you cannot do this. You must join us, they shrieked, morphing into their fractured selves. Together, we echoed back defiantly, our anguish burning bright against the darkness, tethering us together through love. With a final surge, I reached toward Tessa's outstretched hand, wrapping my fingers around her, pulling her into the light as I felt the surge of despair dissipate, the shadows evaporating like mist within a storm. In that moment, I understood the truth was not merely unlocking the key to escape. It was about healing, about facing the darkness that festered and bound us when we felt most alone. You're free, I whispered fiercely as her essence merged with mine, filling the space around us with light. But just as the darkness trembled, unwilling to surrender, something shifted within. That radiant pulsea darkness still lurked at the edges, haunting and insatiable. You may have escaped, it echoed ominously, tearing through the remnants of reality. But darkness never truly leaves. Before I could comprehend its intent, it lunged, reclaiming its grasp on time and space. The ground beneath trembled violently, threatening to consume us whole. No, I screamed, tightening my grip on Tessa. And then, as the abyss yawned once more, it dawned upon me energy would always exist, a cataclysmic loop where time folded back on itself, the shadows retaining a pulse that would never fade. The darkness would continue, ever hungry. A shiver danced across my skin as I realized the truth. The forest and I were irrevocably entwined, and as we were engulfed in a void once more, a haunting whisper wrapped itself around my heart, the final revelation echoing far into the depths of despair. You are one with the darkness now.